topic, or would you like to make an opening statement?
No, I'm going to reserve all of
All right. Mr. Wall, you may call your first witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Mike Brown to the stand. Come forward and be sworn, Mr. Brown.
Sir, if you just come right up here. You just stand there and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, now see right here. We are going to ask you to just make sure you speak in the microphone so everyone can. There you go. Go ahead when you're ready.
Tell us your name, please.
My name is Michael Brown,
Will you spell your first name for us?
M-I-C-H-A-E-L,
And your last name?
B-R-O-W-N.
Mr. Brown, where do you reside?
I live at 1715 Gaines Street in Davenport, Iowa.
How long have you lived at 1715 Gaines Street in Davenport?
Almost 30 years.
How long have you lived in Davenport, Iowa?
I've lived there all my life.
What I want to do, Mr. Brown, is direct your attention to events occurring on September 17, 1990. Do you recall September 17, 1990?
Yes, I do.
I want to direct your attention to events in the evening of September 17, 1990. What were you doing in the evening of September 17, 1990?
I was up at Jefferson School at a meeting.
What kind of school is Jefferson?
Jefferson is an elementary school.
Is it still there today?
Yes.
And what relation in 1990 did Jefferson School have to your family?
I had a son going to school there.
What grade was he in 1990?
I think he was second or third grade. I'm not positive. Second or third.
What I'm going to do Mr. Brown, is show you an exhibit that has been marked as state's proposed 200. Have you take a quick look at that, please, for yourself.
Okay.
And just tell us generally what is depicted in state's proposed exhibit 200.
This is an aerial view of Jefferson Elementary School and the surrounding area.
And is that how Jefferson School in Davenport, Iowa and the surrounding area looked on September 17th of 1990?
Yes.
If the jury had been able to look at that view on September 17th, 1990, is that what they would have seen?
Yes.
And if they're able to view it today, would that help them understand your testimony?
No.
Would that help them understand your testimony as far as what Jefferson School looked like and what you saw on September 17th, 1990?
I thought you said that they saw it today.
Oh, no. I mean, if the jury's able to view Exhibit 200.
Oh, okay, yes.
All right.
I'm sorry.
My confusion, probably. If the jury was able to look at Exhibit 200 today, would that assist them in understanding?
Yes, it would.
All right, thank you. I offer State's Exhibit 200, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 200 is admitted.
And I'd like to publish it for the jury.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, publish is just a fancy word that the lawyers, I'm sure, will use throughout this trial. It just means to show you the exhibit.
Okay. So what we have here on the projected on the screen then, Mr. Brown, is State's Exhibit 200, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's pretty far from you, so you can't point at it, correct?
Right.
So I'm going to see here if I can point at some things. And what am I pointing to here?
Jefferson School.
And I can't reach it myself, but it looks like the shadow here of the pointer. What street is that right there?
That's 12th Street.
And then if I follow the street, and then there's a street that is perpendicular heading, what I know to be north. What street is that?
That would be Myrtle.
Okay, spelled M-Y-R-T-L-E?
Yes.
Okay, and then am I following 12th Street here does it curve?
Yes, it makes a 90-degree turn there, and I think that's Vine Street. I'm not positive.
All right. And what is this street right here that I'm pointing to, right on the left-hand side of State's Exhibit 200?
That would be Marquette.
And it's fairly obvious for most of us, I hope 100% of us, what I'm pointing to here. But let's go ahead and say for the record what I'm pointing to right here.
Ball diamond.
And again, another really obvious thing,
The
but
playground.
what?
The playground.
Okay. And then what am I pointing to up here?
That would be the parking area.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I think you told us that in the evening of September 17th, 1990, you were at Jefferson School. What was the reason for you being at Jefferson?
I was in charge of the Dad's Club program, which is a softball organization, and we were having a meeting that night. And also, the PTA was having a meeting that night because we were getting ready for fun night.
What time did the Dad's Club meeting begin?
Approximately 6:30.
Can you tell us what time the PTA meeting began?
I think it began at approximately the same time, but I didn't attend it because I was at the Dad's Club meeting.
So you went to the Dad's Club meeting at approximately 6:30?
Right.
And how long did that meeting last?
About an hour.
So now we're at approximately 7:30 p.m. on September 17th, 1990?
Probably.
Okay. And after the Dad's Club meeting ended, what did you do?
Well, I went over to the PTA meeting, and they were discussing things that didn't really pertain to us, so I went outside.
What did you do outside?
I had a cigarette.
Okay. So how long do you think you were outside for?
Another 5 minutes, maybe a little longer.
Then where did you go?
I went back into the PTA meeting.
And approximately what time did the PTA meeting end?
I'm going to say roughly 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that.
So then what did you do after the PTA meeting ended?
Well, my wife was with me, and we went out and got in the car, and we left the building, or left the parking area, and we went across 12th Street. And as we turned the corner to go up Myrtle, there was a fire in that field behind the ball diamond. And there shouldn't have been a fire there. And I asked my wife, I said, do you see anybody there? Is anybody around it? And she said, I don't see anybody. So then we went back up to school. And as I was going into school, the custodian was going up the steps, and I said to Randy, I said, Randy, there's a fire out behind the ball diamond. But I didn't think he heard me. So I went down to the principal's office, and I told the principal to call the fire department. And so he did, and we left. Or I went back, my wife stayed in the car, and I went back out and got in the car, and we were leaving. And I saw Randy walking down the street towards where the fire was. And so I just continued on and went home.
Okay, Mr. Mr. Brown. I don't have any further questions for you. These attorneys over here may.
Any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Brown. Randy, that janitor there.
Yes.
Did he have long hair, short hair, you know, back then?
I don't really recall. I don't think he had long hair, but I don't really remember.
Mr. Walton, Your Honor, if I may.
Sure.
Mr. Brown, I'll try to use my, just to get the bearing straight here, that the road that has the curve that does 90 degrees, that's 12th Street, correct?
Yes, it is.
On the track of my finger, and it bends this way, right? That's 12th Street?
Yes.
Okay, and then the street just up above that runs parallel to it, what street is that, do you know?
It would be 13.
Okay. And this street right here is?
Myrtle.
Okay. Where's Vine Street on this map, you know?
Well, I'm not positive, but when 12th Street goes around and makes that curve there, I think it turns into Vine Street there.
It turns into Vine Street here?
Right, where it makes that 90-degree turn there.
It's making a curve. And you say, as you see this picture, that's how the area looked back in 1990?
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't look that way now.
No.
Okay. So there was an open field, essentially to the north of 12th Street, or open areas, correct?
Yes.
And on the north side of 12th Street towards that bend, are there trees and bushes? Is that what those are?
Are there now, or was it?
No, back then.
I don't recall, to be honest with you.
Okay. But you don't have any quibble with the fact that this is what the area looked like back then?
No.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Did you redirect?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Will you sit down? Can you call your next witness?
State will call Randall Stender.
Okay, sir, before you sit down, can you raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you.
Please state your full name.
Randall Stender,
Mr. Stender, where do you live?
from Davenport.
How long have you been at Davenport, Iowa?
Yes, I've been there all night.
Lived there all your life?
Yes.
What was your occupation?
I was at Davenport School District.
How long did you live, excuse me, how long did you work for the Davenport School District?
30 years.
I'm sorry, how long?
30 years.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, Mr. Stender, I had some technical difficulties. So you worked, I'm going to stand over here if that's okay.
That's fine.
So you worked at Jefferson School for the Davenport School System for 30 years?
Yes.
Was part of that time at Jefferson School?
Yes.
Were you working at Jefferson School on September 17th, 1990?
Yes, I was.
What was your occupation at the school? Evening custodian?
Yes.
And were you working that night at about 9 p.m.?
2:30 to 11.
Your hours are 2:30 to 11.
Yeah.
Did something happen unusual that night?
Yes.
What happened?
It was a total of 5.
What time?
9 o'clock.
How do you know it was 9 o'clock?
I was sitting there looking at my watch and I said the door.
You specifically remember looking at your watch? And how did you find out about the fire?
Mike Brown, the parents, came back to the building. There was a few buildings that night. Came back to the building and he was running.
Okay. And what did you do when he told you there was a fire?
He told me there was a plane shooting up 10 feet in the air down there.
There were flames shooting up
10 feet in the air.
10 feet in the air.
Yeah. On a property down below the hill. So he went in the building, I went outside to check it out.
And when he went outside to check it out, what happened?
I got to the top of the main body and I looked down below the hill and started shooting 6 to 8 inches up in the air.
The flames were shooting, you think about 6, did you say 6
6 to 8
inches?
inches up in the air.
And how big of a fire was it?
Probably about 20 feet in the air.
Okay. Now, what did you do when you saw the fire?
I think it was going to call the fire department for that, so I started something out.
And how did you stomp it out?
I shoot.
What happened?
So I all the little flames put out and I came to the last flame, which I thought was the body.
All right.
It was dark, it was 9 o'clock at night.
Okay. So you see something, you think it's a body, what did you do then?
I raced the heck to the school.
And what do you mean by you raced?
I ran as fast as I could back to the school.
Okay. What did you do then?
I met a little parent coming out of the meeting. I told her to drive me down there because I didn't believe what I was seeing.
Why do you believe what you were seeing?
Well, it looked like she was in a fetal position, the arms crossed, looking at the wall or something, but I didn't know for sure.
Started to doubt maybe what you thought you saw,
Yeah.
and so you asked another parent to drive you down there.
And sure the headlights on, you feel the body.
Once the headlights were on it, you had no doubt. What did you do then?
She turned around in the car and started right to the building. Right then, the fire was
So as you're heading back towards Jefferson in the car, now the fire department's coming?
Yes.
So somebody had already called the fire?
He came back around there, he went in the building.
Okay. And what happened then when the fire department arrived?
I really got down there and saw there was a gas fire.
And what happened then?
Well, he started asking questions about what I saw when I did.
Okay. And I take you pulled down.
Yes.
When you were, that night, recall what you were wearing?
White t-shirt and jeans,
Okay. What type of shoes?
tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes?
Yep.
What was your hair like back then?
I had long hair and back and shirt and some bullets couple of the knees.
Okay. Long hair back and you did short in front.
Right.
You described running, you're looking down an incline.
Yes.
Was where Jennifer's body was that like down a hill sort of from the school?
I just the car, there was an incline down there.
Incline.
Yeah.
And what, was she near a street?
Close to the line where she was at.
She was near the corner where 12th Street makes a bend and goes.
What was that answer?
Vine Street.
12th becomes Vine Street. And that's where you saw her?
Yes.
Hold on just a minute. Mr. Stender, when you saw Jennifer's body, and you testified you could see her arms, was she in any sort of box or anything? No, just her body.
That's all.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Hallbaker.
Mr. Hawbaker?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Stender, I don't have much to ask you, but that night you were dressed in a white t-shirt and jeans, is that correct? Do you remember, was it cold outside when you were out there at 9 o'clock? But you do remember that it was dark?
Yeah.
Okay. And my guess is down along that bend, it's pretty dark down there too, is that right? There's no light down at all. And there's trees down there too, correct?
Not on the line,
Say-
Not with the what?
But down along where 12 turns into Vine, then there can be trees, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And actually, before 12 turns into Vine, along 12 where the bushes and trees are, there used to be anyway. And I'm assuming out of anybody, you're probably most familiar with those school grounds in that area. Were you wearing a hat or anything that night? Mullet means a lot of things. Was your hair so long you put it in a ponytail, that sort of thing? Okay, so just a little longer in the back and a little shorter.
Anything further, Mr. Watt?
No further questions. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Stender.
Your Honor, any people?
Sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take a break. Let's go ahead and start again at 5 minutes to 3. Keep the longer admonition in mind. Continue to keep an open mind. Do not discuss the case. Please rise for the jury. Please be seated, everyone. Ms. Walton, you may call your next witness.
The state calls Virginia Schulz to the stand. Come forward and be sworn, please.
Just come right up here, please. Just raise your right hand and be sworn in. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. I'll sit right there and make sure you're speaking. That's okay. Yeah, that one. Go ahead when you're ready.
Tell us your name, please.
Virginia Schulz.
Will you spell your last name for us?
Sure. S-C-H-U-L-Z.
What I want to do is direct your attention, Ms. Schulz, to events occurring in September of 1990. Were you employed in September of 1990?
Yes.
What was your occupation?
I was a communications clerk with Davenport Police.
As of 1990, how long had you been a communications clerk with the Davenport Police?
I had started in March of 90, and so 6 months.
And then how long did you remain with the Davenport Police?
I retired in 2007.
So you retired from your position as a communications clerk?
Yes,
And now you're enjoying your time in retirement?
I am.
Can I ask you, what was your last name in 1990?
My maiden name was Ward.
W-A-R-D?
Correct.
Well, why don't you tell us what the duties were of a communications clerk?
Primarily as a 911 dispatcher, so to take emergency calls when they came in. And for the city of Davenport, it was police, fire, and EMS calls. We did also take just everyday non-emergency calls as well on the front desk.
So just tell us just generally where were you and what sort of equipment did you use?
I was in the dispatch office, or I guess the dispatch center, and at the time we had, I should say it was an enhanced system. When a 911 call would come into the center, then it would paint on the screen, or I would get a printout of the residence and the address, the phone number from which the call was made.
And what do you mean by enhanced?
That it gave that information to me. I would ask, is this such and such, are you at this address, just to verify. But enhanced was that that information was painted instantly on the screen for me.
Once someone had called 911?
Yes, yes.
So even if they weren't able to complete the call, there'd be a good chance that you still know where the call was from?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now I want to direct your attention to events occurring on September 17th, specifically in 1990. Were you working that day?
I was.
What shift were you working?
Called it afternoon shift or second shift. It was a 3 to 11.
And let me back up just 1 second and ask you what sort of training you had with regard to being a communications clerk dispatcher.
This was an on-the-job training, and different, I guess you would build up to taking a 911 call and start you maybe at the desk doing routine calls, and work your way into the emergency chair.
And so by September 17th of 1990, were you in an emergency chair?
I was.
And I want to ask you whether or not during your shift you received a call regarding an event at Jefferson School.
I did.
And just in general, tell me what sort of call that was.
I came into the dispatch center as a fire, a trash fire, by Jefferson School.
What did you do in response to that call?
I put in, or entered, we call it, a call to dispatch a fire rig, and engine 6 was dispatched to the call.
Is there a record, back in 1990, was there records kept of every 911 call?
Yes.
And can you tell me how that was done?
I know they're kept in computer-wise, of course, and or could be found or recalled at any time.
Via the computer?
Yes.
And could they be printed out?
Yes.
And was the information kept in the computer as well as the information printed out from those records? Were those records kept in the ordinary course of business at the Davenport Police Department?
Yes.
And were they relied upon by members of the Davenport Police Department and others to do their job?
Yes.
And to recall exactly what events might have occurred with reference to a 911 call?
Yes, they were.
And what time certain units were dispatched?
Yes.
What I want to do now is show you an exhibit that's been marked as State's Proposed Exhibit 77. Cross over this way. And just take a look at Exhibit 77 and tell me whether or not you know what that is.
Yes, it is a printout of the call from September 17th of 1990.
And this is the one that you just referred to with reference to Jefferson School?
Yes,
And is that, and as you stated, that's a printout, correct?
it is.
And is that an accurate printout of events that occurred on September 17th, 1990?
It is.
I offer State's Exhibit 77.
Any objection?
Objection, Your Honor.
77 is admitted.
And what I want to ask you, Ms. Schulz, is to tell us what time of evening the 911 call came in.
I took the call at, we use military time, 21:06, but that's 6 minutes after 9.
6 minutes after 9 p.m.
In the evening, yes.
What, does it say who the call was from?
It does. That's where the enhanced part of our system came in. It tells me the residence of the caller, the address, and their phone number.
And can you tell by looking at the address whether it's an address in the vicinity of the school, near the school?
Yes, it is.
And did it appear to be from a resident? a residence.
That's correct.
And just tell us what the number was that it came in from.
The phone number?
Yes, please.
It was 319-323-8211.
And back in 1990, what was the area code for Davenport?
319.
It's no longer 31.
No.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any cross-examination? Thank you. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the state is going to offer previously filed Exhibit 514, which is the prior sworn testimony of Earl Osterberg, E-A-R-L, O-S-T-E-R-B-E-G.
B-E-G or B-E-R-G?
B-E-R-G.
Okay, thank you.
And at this time, Your Honor, assuming it's admitted as an exhibit, we will ask to have it read as testimony, and of course, we would just ask that it replace the record so that the court reporter doesn't yet again have to take this down. It will be read by Lieutenant Sonny Alvarez of the Davenport Police Department, or Davenport Fire Department.
Any objection? Exhibit 514 is admitted as prior sworn testimony, but will not go to the jury.
Would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last names?
My name is Earl Osterberg. E-A-R-L-O-S-T-E-R-B-E-R-G.
What is your current occupation?
I'm a firefighter for the city of Davenport.
How long have you been so employed?
29 years.
What is your current rank?
Captain,
What are your general duties as captain?
I'm in charge of Fire Station Number 6 in Northwest Davenport, and specifically Engine 6, with all 3 shifts and men on the crews.
Generally describe what the differing ranks within the Davenport Fire Department are.
Well, they start out on probationary, advance to engineer, lieutenant, captain, district chief.
Were you working on September 17, 1990?
Yes,
And were you a captain at that time as well?
that's correct.
And were you in charge in engine number 6?
Yes,
Did you respond to a call in the vicinity of Jefferson School in Davenport?
yes, sir, I did.
What time did you respond to that scene?
It was approximately 9:07 in the evening.
How did engine number 6 approach the area of Jefferson School?
We turned off Marquette Street, east onto 12th, and advanced past Jefferson School.
And where in relation to Jefferson School was the fire?
Just beyond, over the hill by Jefferson School.
What sort of call was that? What sort of fire were you expecting?
We were dispatched to a trash fire at the time. That's what we were expecting.
And when you first arrived, and when you first appeared at that scene, what did you observe?
It had all the indications of being just a trash fire.
And what did you first see when you got there then? Was there anyone else near there?
As we went past Jefferson School, we slowed slightly because we were dispatched to a trash fire, and I saw a man approach us frantically over the hill, and we drove towards him, and he ran down the hill, and he pulled up short, and we continued on to what we thought was the base of the fire.
And that was on 12th Street when you first,
12th Street.
when you saw this. Where were you located in the engine?
I ride on the right side, shotgun of the engine.
And who was driving?
Private Berglund.
And who else was on that engine?
On the back end was firefighter Dave Parrick.
He's the individual who just testified before you?
That's right.
Were there any other emergency vehicles at the scene at that time?
Not at that time.
And as you approached the fire, what did you observe?
As we approached the fire, I had on my mind it was just trash fire. I put the spotlight on what I thought was the base of the fire, and then I recognized it looked like a body of a small person.
Where was Private Parrick at that time?
He was just behind me in the jump seat of the fire truck facing the opposite direction.
And are you the individual who gives Private Parrick his instructions as to what to do?
Right.
What did you instruct him to do?
I yelled initially a 3-gallon.
What does that mean?
When we approach the fire, if we have something large enough to warrant a large-sized line or booster line, I usually call that out initially to know what to start getting. This was a small fire, and I said 3-gallon is what I wanted him to use.
And when you discovered there was a body in the fire, what other significant instructions did you give?
Well, we didn't want to disturb the area. Just had firefighter Parrick take one step off the street, put a finger over the nozzle, and fan the flames to put out the risk of fire.
And the significance of just fanning?
We didn't want to disturb the evidence.
You described someone was holding Private Parrick?
Just to make sure he didn't go any further, just to support him.
And was the flame extinguished?
Yes, they were.
How many shots from the 3-gallon did that take?
Just a small fanning from the 3-gallon.
After it was extinguished, what did you do?
Stepped back and just protected the fire scene. I had already notified dispatch of what we had.
And did you stay at the scene and secure it until police officers arrived there?
That's correct.
And you made sure that it wasn't contaminated in any way?
In no way.
No further questions?
Go ahead.
Captain, did you have the opportunity to see if firefighter actually used the fire extinguisher?
Yes, I did.
And would it be fair to say that the technique that he used with the 3-gallon was to go very lightly fog or fan the remaining few flames with water?
That's correct.
To your observation, then, the child's body would not have been struck by a stream of water like from a hose or anything.
No, it wasn't.
And the body was not washed down by this fog or fanning flame of water.
No, sir.
Officer or firefighter Parrick thought that perhaps he took a step off the truck and stood barely into the grassy area next to the remains. Would that be a possibility?
Just barely into the area. We didn't want to disturb the area at all.
I take it the reason you held on to him like that, he needed to lean to get good coverage, and you didn't want him stumbling into it or falling.
That's correct.
To the best of your knowledge, then, the light fogging or fanning of water spray was the only thing that was used to extinguish these flames.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. You may sit down.
At this time, Your Honor, the state calls David Parrick to the stand. Come forward and be sworn, please.
Let's come up here and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat right here. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tell us your name, please.
David Parrick,
Will you spell your last name for us?
Parrick.
What is your occupation?
Captain of the Davenport Fire Department.
Will you briefly review your training and experience in your occupation?
Okay. I'm trained to work as a supervisor of a fire company. We would go in, emergency situations could be fire, EMS situation, car crash, anything else out of the ordinary that we'd get called to supervise a crew.
think we all know what EMS is, but I'll just ask you, what does EMS mean?
Emergency medical services.
How long have you been employed with the Davenport Fire Department?
It will be 33 years this October.
What I want to do now is ask you, is bring your attention to September of 1990. You were working as a firefighter then?
Correct.
What was your rank back in 1990?
Back then, I was officially called a junior private.
And you had been with the department how long?
Not quite 3 years.
What were your general duties then?
I was the least senior man on the fire company. I would do the work around the station, the janitorial, basic labor stuff, clean equipment, check out equipment, do as I'm told on a fire scene. I was an EMT at the time.
And so you would of course go on the rig and the fires.
Correct.
Where would be your position on the fire engine?
It was called, and still is called, a back-end man because they ride on the back. It's on the front, you have the driver, also known as the engineer. He's the second in command. You have the officer, which is a commander. He rides in the passenger seat. And then on the back end, you would have the back-end man, the private.
And that was you?
That was me.
And so I'm going to draw your attention to events occurring specifically on September 17th of 1990. Were you working in just the duties you've described?
I was.
What shift would you have been working that day?
That was C shift at the time.
What hours?
I'm sorry?
What hours?
We would start our shift at 6:45 in the morning, and it would carry through 24 hours to 6:45 the next morning. We had 3 shifts that rotated, A, B, and C. I was on C.
Did you respond to a call put out to the fire department to the area of Jefferson School?
Yes.
And we've already had previous testimony, but why don't you tell us generally, where is Jefferson School located in Davenport?
Off of Marquette Street and 10th, I believe it is.
If the record says it's 12th Street, would you be?
Yes, it would be fine. 12th Street would be fine, yes, I'm sorry. And it would be to the east of Marquette Street.
Why don't you describe for us when you got to the vicinity of Jefferson School, what did you observe?
Okay, we were originally called to what was thought of to be a trash fire. We were met, there was a crest of a hill just short of the scene. We were met there by a man that I believe turned out to be a custodian, and he pointed us down to the area. And in my position of the vehicle, I was riding facing rearward. So we rode down there and pulled up adjacent to the fire, and then as I stood up, that's the first time I saw that it was a body. And I retrieved a 3-gallon water extinguisher from the fire truck and just stepped in and gave it a quick squirt with water using a fan pattern, and then stepped back. There was very little fire at the time.
And you observed, as you were able to observe that what was on fire was a body rather than trash?
Yes.
And that the fire was still going?
Yes.
And then tell us the significance of the 3-gallon. What does that mean?
It's a pressurized water cylinder that we commonly call it a 3-gallon because it carries approximately 3 gallons of water under 100 pounds of pressure. It has a little rubber hose about 2 feet coming off it with a little straight tip. At the time I put my thumb over it, it's common practice just to fan the pattern so you don't just blast water on it. It spreads the water out, does a better job of extinguishing, and in this case I didn't want to disturb any evidence.
What happened after you extinguished the fire?
I stepped back and we left the scene undisturbed until police showed up.
And was it your job, the fire department's job, to secure the scene until the police showed up?
We are capable of doing that, yes.
And is that what you did that night?
Yes.
And were there any community members around the scene when you were there?
No.
And tell us what the scene was when, just as the police showed.
It was, well, the scene was a open field back of the school. There's basically just a grass field, and we pulled up on the road right alongside of it. And after we put out the fire, we just made sure that nobody else wandered down.
And then the police...
Then the police started showing up, and we helped them pull a little bit of barrier tape just to mark the perimeters of the scene, and then we were released.
Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions. I have no further questions for you. Mr. Hawbaker may have a question for you.
You may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, I'm assuming that when you got to the area where the fire was out, that it was dark out, so it was time of night.
Yes.
And that this is not particularly, my understanding is this is not a particularly well-lit area.
No.
There's no street light down around 12 when it turns to 9 or anything like that.
I can't testify to that, but it was not a well-lit area. No, you're correct.
When you come up adjacent to where the fire's at in the field, is there some effort made, either with your colleagues, to light the area somewhat so you can see what you're spraying?
Yes.
Okay. How was that done?
The rigs are different now, but at the time we had basically a headlight bulb mounted in a swivel arm that the officer could spin and move up and down crudely and light the scene. It was basically general lighting, not specific task lighting type.
Was it enough that you could see the body and possibly any injuries to the body with that lighting?
I could see that it was a body, yes.
Okay. Did you notice any scratches or any injuries to the skin of that body?
I didn't examine the body after extinguishment.
Okay. So the extent of your involvement with the body was the spraying and then you went and helped the police when they got there?
Correct.
And didn't take very long to put the fire out?
No.
And thank you, sir.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
You may step down. Thank you.
Your Honor, pursuant to the previous order of the court, stated this time we're in Osterberg, Exhibit 502, the transcript of the testimony of James Carpenter, going to be read by Assistant Chief James Morris of the Davenport Fire Department.
Any objection to admitting Exhibit 502?
Sorry, Your Honor. No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 502 is admitted.
Please approach, please, one.
I think this,
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I forgot, you're reading the transcript.
right, it's sworn testimony already in the transcript, correct?
Sworn testimony, yes.
Just make sure you speak in the microphone, sir. Go ahead.
Tell the jury who you are, please.
James Dean Carpenter, City Fire Marshal.
And how long, have you been employed by the city of Davenport in the capacity as a firefighter?
This will be my 27th year,
And how long your capacity as fire marshal?
approximately 3 years.
Will you tell the jury briefly what your duties as fire marshal for the city of Davenport entail, please?
I supervise the inspection program and the code enforcement. I supervise the fire cause and arson investigation program. I take part in inspections and investigations.
Part of your duties then, Captain Carpenter, include the investigation of fires where arson is suspected.
That's correct.
Could you tell the jury briefly about your formal education background?
I've had several weak fire arson investigations.
Captain Carpenter, tell them about your formal education, where you went to college.
I'm a high school graduate. I picked up some time at Blackhawk College in 1 year of college, and I've picked up some college courses that are college credits at CEU.
What type of courses are you taking?
We would take courses for fire cause and arson investigations.
Still, back to your formal education, what was the thrust of the courses that you took?
General studies, informal education.
Now, have you had any specific training with respect to arson investigation?
Yes, the initial fire academy had an 80 course of arson causation courses. The state of Iowa State Fire Marshal puts on this course annually on an annual basis. I attended the course in 1980 at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Have you attended any seminars specifically relating to arson investigations?
Right. Myself and all of my investigators belong to the Iowa chapter of the International Chapter of Arson Investigators, and we have an annual seminar, sometimes several a year, at least one 3-day seminar in each year.
And have you attended several of those seminars?
Yes, probably 15 or 20.
Do you read any professional journals or literature in the area of arson investigation?
Yes, I do. In my testimony and in my investigation, I'm called upon to use the professional journals that are put out by arson investigators, pathologists, and attorneys.
Is there any continuing education requirement for you to be an arson investigator?
Other than the fact that we do attend seminars, there's no mandatory law requirement.
Does Iowa offer a certification for an arson investigator if you know?
No, they don't.
Are you certified by any agency as an arson investigator?
No.
Now, Captain Carpenter, have you investigated fires previous to this incident here where arson was suspected?
That's correct.
Have you done that on more than one occasion?
Probably hundreds.
Are you the primary arson investigator for the city of Davenport?
Yes, I am.
If arson is suspected, are you the one that goes to the investigation?
I have an arson investigator who is also a police officer on each shift. We have a 3-shift system in the city of Davenport. Also, there are fire cause investigators that have the fire cause schools that are not police officers. Those investigators would be the first ones on the scene along with the fire chief and the firefighters. And then if we find that it is a suspicious fire, they call on one of the arson investigators. And then if necessary, I am called to assist the arson investigator. I'm automatically called whenever there are serious injuries or deaths or major fires.
How many arson investigations would you estimate you have done?
Probably close to 1,000. It would have to be a guess.
Have you ever testified in any other courts as an expert in arson investigation?
I've testified for the most part in Scott County courts on a number of cases.
And would those cases specifically involve an allegation of arson?
Yes, they would.
And you testified as an expert?
Yes, I did.
Now, going back to September 17th of 1990, Captain Carpenter, were you at any time on that date requesting to investigate a fire in the city of Davenport?
Yes, I was.
And where was that fire located?
It was on 12th Street between Myrtle and Vine, just west of Jefferson School.
Where were you located when you got the call to that location?
I work an 8-hour shift, so I was at home, but I'm on call 24 hours. I was called in by dispatch.
And what time were you called?
Approximately 9:25.
And what time did you arrive at the fire scene?
It would have taken me approximately 15 to 20 minutes for me to arrive from my home.
What time would that have made it approximately?
Right about 9:45.
Who was on scene when you arrived?
We had the fire crew that had discovered the fire were still there. Captain Ted Carroll, the chief of detectives. There were several detectives, evidence technicians, and they had the scene roped off and keeping the public away.
When you arrived at the scene, did you observe a body?
Yes, I did.
Do you know of your own personal knowledge whether that body had been moved prior to your arrival?
The first thing I asked Captain Carroll when I got there is what had been done to the body before my arrival, and he said, nothing has been touched prior to this point.
When you arrived at the scene, Captain Carpenter, could you tell the jury what you did?
I took over the investigation as far as the fire was concerned, and I organized the pictures that would be taken, the evidence samples that would be taken, and directed the people which evidence samples and which pictures to take. I observed the scene myself so I would be able to write my report and include everything that I observed, and then I directed the firefighters that were with me as to what they should do, and eventually I was actually there really directing the forensic evidence until we transported the little girl.
Would it be fair to say that you were in charge of the investigation of the fire?
That's correct.
You weren't involved in the investigation done by any of the police officers with regard to who might have done this?
Yes. Essentially, I did do some of that, but I wasn't heavily involved.
You directed that some pictures be taken?
Yes, I did.
Captain Carpenter, I would like to show you what has been marked for identification as State's Exhibit number 60 and ask if you could identify what that picture is for the jury, please.
This is a picture taken from an aerial ladder on the night that the little girl was discovered. It shows...
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead and continue identification.
It shows the Blacktop Road, which would have been 12th Street, and a large stone that was located about 3 feet east of the little girl, and then the burn patterns of the grass that extend to the west.
Were you personally present when that picture was taken?
Yes, I was.
And on what date was that picture taken?
This would have been taken on the night of the fire, the 17th, I think.
And was that picture, if you were present, was obviously taken after you arrived? Was it taken at your direction?
This picture was taken by Lieutenant Kern.
At your direction?
I told him that we needed pictures taken. Once he got up on the ladder, then he took a number of pictures, but it wasn't my request, and obviously it was Lieutenant Kern's obligation to make sure that we took pictures.
Did you go up on the ladder and observe that scene?
I was up there once during the night.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the scene you observed on September 17, 1990?
Yes, it is.
And is that the location of the body when you arrived?
Yes, it is.
Does that picture appear to be changed or altered in any respect other than being enlarged, perhaps?
No.
We would offer State's Exhibit 60.
Any objection?
No additional objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 60 is admitted.
I'm going to now hand you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 58 and ask if you could please identify this to the jury.
This is a picture of the same scene taken on the following day. In the back portion of the picture, you can see Myrtle Street going to the north and identify how it relates to 12th, which runs east and west. The burned area in the center part of the picture is the burnt grass, which was the result of the fire spreading to the west from where the little girl was found.
Were you present when that picture was taken?
I believe so.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the scene on September 18, 1990?
Yes, it is.
No alterations or changes?
To the picture, no. The picture, other than being enlarged, would be the same picture.
We would offer State's Exhibit 58.
Any objection?
No objection.
58 is admitted.
Did you take any measurements while you were at the scene that evening, Captain Carpenter?
Yes, we did. We took the measurements so that we could enter them into the report.
While handy what's been received into evidence as State's Exhibit 60 and asks that you tell the jury about how far that body is located from the street and what that street is. Your Honor, at this time I'd ask to project 60 on the screen.
Yes, you may.
Handy what has been received into evidence as State's Exhibit 60 and asks you to tell the jury about how far that body is located from the street and what street that is.
This would be 12th Street, West 12th. That's approximately just a little more than 7 feet, I believe.
I'm going to direct your attention, Captain Carpenter, to an area, strike that. I think we'll put it this way, with the court's permission. Captain Carpenter, I'm going to point out an area of this exhibit to you, and please explain to the jury what it depicts. And your area I'm referring to specifically is this burned area right in this area. What would this area appear to be?
You can see that it appears to have a different coloration than the rest of the burned area in the grass. This is what we determined to be a probable accelerant pattern, which would have been what we call a trailer, which would come from the Little Girl towards the Blacktop Road. Oftentimes those are used as areas where igniting a fire in an arson case.
Now, you indicated, Captain Carpenter, that you also directed some other pictures to be taken this evening.
That's correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for the purposes states. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as states proposed Exhibit 15 and ask you, number one, if you can identify that photograph.
Yes, this is a photograph that was taken at the autopsy at my direction.
Did you attend the autopsy of Jennifer Lewis?
Yes, I did.
You were there personally?
Yes, I was.
Were you there when that photograph was taken?
Yes, I was.
Does that photograph fairly and accurately represent what you saw at the autopsy?
Yes, it does.
Other than being enlarged, have any changes or alterations been done?
No, there isn't.
We would offer State's Exhibit 15, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, no objection.
Exhibit 15 is admitted.
Can you tell the jury, Captain Carpenter, what that picture depicts?
Can I use the pointer?
Yes. I'm going to display it.
Okay, this picture is not focusing very well, but the hair in this area
is relatively in good shape and in unburned condition. The clothing on this particular portion was in unburned condition. The portion of the little girl's back is in an unburned condition. The reason for this is we have what we call a protected area in a fire investigation. This would show that she was lying on her back at the time that the fire had ignited and promulgated. That's the reason the hair, that portion, and the clothing, and this portion of this back was uninvolved in the fire damage. The severe damage that you see down here around the waist area is because of the indentation of the small of your back. If a flammable liquid is poured on the little girl, the liquid would roll off the side of the waist and roll underneath the body. That's the easiest path, all the liquid that it will take. Once it got underneath the body, you need three things to make sure that the fire continues to burn. You have to have oxygen, you have to have heat, and you have to have fuel. When it comes underneath the body, then the oxygen is inhibited and it can't get to the fire that was being promulgated. Right where the small of the back is, it allows some of the air to get under the body. You can see the fire on the back portion of the body was pretty severe at the top, where it lay tightly against the ground, and the heavy portion of the body, you can see it was protected. This picture showed to us investigators that the little girl was laying on the grass at the time the fire had started and promulgated.
Again, I'll show you, Captain Carpenter, what has been identified, marked for identification as State's Exhibit 14, and ask if you could please identify that for the jury.
Yes, this is another picture that was taken during the autopsy at my request, because we found another protected area that I wanted to point out.
Were you there when it was taken?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of what you saw at the autopsy?
Yes, it is.
Are there any alterations or changes other than the enlargement of the photograph?
No, sir.
The law for State's Exhibit 14, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
14 is admitted.
Could you once again explain the significance of that photograph to the jury?
There were several things that we wanted to show in this particular picture. For one thing, the picture shows a classic of what we call a pugilistic configuration of the body after the fire. You can see the legs, how they spread, and their muscles are buckled up into a tight position. This is caused by the fire contracting the muscles and the ligaments of the body. In addition, this also shows, once again, in the buttocks area, a protected area which shows that she was laying on the ground at the time the fire was ignited and promulgated.
Would that be another protected area?
Yes, that is a protected area. And there was one other thing that we had real severe damage on the buttock area and the groin area. And this picture shows some of that in that area.
And what would severe damage indicate to you as an arson investigator?
That there was an accelerant poured in that portion of the body.
Thank you. You can resume your seat, Captain. Finally, Captain, I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 7 and ask if you could identify that, please.
Yes, I can.
And what does that picture depict?
It depicts the little girl's body as she was still laying in the original location.
Is that the location that the body was in when you arrived at the scene?
That's correct.
Were you present when that photograph was taken?
Yes, I was.
Was it taken at your direction?
Yes, it was.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the scene on the evening of September 17, 1990?
Yes, it is.
Any alterations or changes?
No.
We would offer State's Exhibit 7, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
7 is admitted.
Captain Carpenter, could you explain the relevance of this photograph to the jury?
We took this picture because it showed the overall burn pattern of the body, which is important in any fire investigation. In addition, it showed you that had severe burn area in and around the right waist area, and also some of the skin on the front torso, which had been exposed to the flames, wasn't nearly as bad. Badly burned as these other areas, such as down here and here. Also, you can see that the right arm is severely burned. We felt that this picture was a good one to show that the accelerant, which had collected underneath the body, had burned to a large degree, and the final burning was right in this area here, which created a long-term burn, which will do more damage to the body, and the fact that we felt that the body itself probably would have self-extinguished because bodies just don't burn that well. With the accelerant being added to the body, that creates intense heat and causes portions of any object, including the body, to burn longer and more severely, and we felt that this area of the body was where the accelerant was poured for the most part.
Is there any significance to the charring of the crotch area?
Well, we think it was poured in this area. In this area, and then the trailer. And then the trailer that we looked at the earlier picture went from this area, which is at the right waist, out towards the blacktop. And it was our feeling, and it's common, that because gasoline is such a volatile material and has a flash explosion when you light it, you don't want to be next to it. You pour the trailer and get away from the vast amount that you poured, and you light it from that position.
Captain Carpenter, on the evening of September 17th, when you were at the scene of the fire, were you present when the body was removed from the scene?
Yes, I was.
And if you recall, about what time would that have been?
I would just have to guess because I didn't pay attention to the time that we removed it. It's probably in my report, if I could read that.
I object to the witness guessing, Your Honor. If you don't know, you don't know.
I would have to look at my report.
Did you help remove the body?
Yes, I did.
When you lifted the body, did you smell anything?
We lifted the body before we moved the body to try to smell accelerant to see if there was anything present.
Did you smell anything when you moved the body the first time?
Yes, we did.
Going to page 491, 26. Did you smell anything when the body was moved?
Yes, I smelled what appeared to me to be gasoline.
Now, while you were at the scene, Captain Carpenter, did you gather any physical evidence?
Yes, we did.
I'm going to hand you, Captain Carpenter, what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 80, and please identify what that is for the jury.
Right, this was the sample that we took at the autopsy of a piece of cloth, and whenever we take arson samples, we always put them in an airtight container.
Were you present when that particular sample was gathered?
Yes, I was.
And if you would look inside the plastic bag, is the sample that appears, does that appear to be a sample that you gathered that evening?
Yes.
And does it appear to be in substantially the same condition as when you gathered it at the autopsy?
Pretty much so, yes.
Any obvious alterations or changes?
The only thing I can see is I think the plastic was touching the cloth at the time we first discovered it.
That's what you personally gathered?
Yes.
What did you do with it?
We immediately put it into the evidence can and sealed the can and marked it for evidence.
Who did you give it to?
Lieutenant Kern from the Police Department Evidence Bureau.
And have you had that in your possession since you turned it over to him?
No.
You would offer State's Exhibit 80, Your Honor.
No objection. 80 is admitted.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification, Captain Carpenter, in a moment, I will. State's Exhibit number 88. I'll hand you that exhibit, Captain Carpenter, and tell the jury what it is, please.
Right, this is a sample that was taken at the scene at the night of the fire. This was when we lifted the body and we got the smell. We took this sample from the area where we got the smell of gasoline. It was underneath the right buttocks and consisted mostly of sod and soil.
Did you personally retrieve that sample?
At my direction, I think my lieutenant put the sample in the container.
You were present when it was gathered?
That's correct.
Does it appear to be substantially the same thing as you collected the evening of the 17th?
Pretty hard to identify, but it's the same type of stuff that we collected.
We would offer State's Exhibit 88, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
88 is admitted.
Now, based on your observations, based on your education, and based on your experience, Captain Carpenter, based on the other things that you've testified to today, do you have an opinion as to whether an accelerant was used in this case?
Yes, I do.
And do you have an opinion as to what that accelerant was?
I would object to that, Your Honor. It's outside the scope of expertise of this witness.
The objection is overruled.
All right, thank you. Saved my work.
Do you have an opinion as to what type of accelerant was used?
Yes.
And what is your opinion?
I object to that question as well as being outside the scope of this expertise. And it was overruled.
Thank you.
Yes, it was gasoline.
No further questions.
State's Exhibit 88, Captain Carpenter, that's dirt, right?
For the most part, yes.
And that's why you have trouble telling whether that's the same dirt that was collected or not.
That's correct.
Hand you State's Exhibit number 7 again. Captain Carpenter, that exhibit, I believe you testified on direct examination, shows a burn pattern down the part. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And part of that burn pattern is related to where you believe the accelerant was. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would this accelerant cool given the topography of the land about the body?
Yes, it could have.
Now, if the accelerant has cooled because there were small indentations about the land near the body, where would it have cooled at?
We found that the topography slanted a little bit toward the road. If it ran away, it would have run toward the road. The body held it around it, and the soil was the absorbency. It pulled around the body instead of pulling with the very slight incline of the topography.
Would there have been pooling around the head area?
There would have been absorption instead of pooling because there was no hard surface.
Would there have been pooling about the rear area or waist area?
Once again, absorption of the soil caused the liquid to stay in that particular place.
Would that also be true about the groin area?
Yes, there would be some absorption there too.
And the presence of that liquid accelerant that you believe to have been there would have caused the fire to burn more extensively in those areas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you indicated also with respect to that exhibit, I believe with respect to State's Exhibit number 14, that the configuration of the ray when the body was found, that's a result of fire, is it not?
Yes, that's my opinion.
And that's described as a pugilistic response of the body.
That's correct.
So the body wasn't placed with the legs in that position. The legs retracted into that position as a result of the fire.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
The objection is overruled.
I can't state what position the legs were in at the time of the fire. I can say that commonly that pugilistic position will be attained after the accelerant and the flames create the intense heat, which damages the body's muscles and tendons.
Based upon your education experience, then, the configuration of the legs that you discovered in this body is consistent with the legs moving into that position as a consequence of fire. Is that correct?
That's correct.
State Exhibit 15, Captain Carpenter, I believe you indicated that that showed some burning in the small of the back area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that would be because, as you indicated, you need fuel, oxygen, and ignition for fire. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so there would have been oxygen under the area to cause burning.
Much more oxygen than you would have in other portions of the body.
The burn pattern which you observed in the area along 12th Street behind Jefferson School, did the grass actually burn?
The grass was actually green, but the thatch in the bottom of the grass by the roots was pretty thick and it was dry.
You mentioned a notion of a trailer from a fire to another point. Would thatch act as a trailer as well?
It was almost bare ground in this particular area.
I would ask again, would thatch act as a trailer as well? Trailer.
If thatch was present.
I have no further cross-examination, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Finn.
We have no further witnesses this afternoon, Your Honor.
All right, let's go ahead and take our evening break then. It's 4:05, ladies and gentlemen, so I'll ask you to make sure you leave your jury notes in the jury room. Keep the admonition in mind. Do not discuss the case and continue to keep an open mind. Please rise for the jury. All right, why don't we take about 5 minutes, and then I would like to see the lawyers, Mr. Liggins and Jill, in jury room B.
B, or okay.